information video 2017. Next term, the Year 2s will be carrying out statutory tests, and these will be done sometime in May. These will be done could be in small groups or as a whole class, which is different to the Year 6 because the Year 6 sets are done on specific days and in specific times. The children are quite familiar with tests because they often do tests in reading and maths 3 times a year to help with identifying any gaps and any support that is needed. The reason we do this test is to inform my judgment on the teacher assessment at the end of Year 2. There are a number of tests. One of the tests is a reading test, and there are 2 papers for this reading test. Paper 1 has got less words, and there is a small passage of text and some questions underneath related to that passage, around about 700 words altogether. Paper 2 is a reading booklet, and it has longer passages totaling around 800 to 1001 words, and children will need to answer the questions in a separate booklet. Each paper is worth about 50% of the mark, and it should take about 30 minutes per test to complete. Although in Year 2 we don't strictly time them, so if they need to go over that amount of time, that is fine. We have been practicing some of these types of questions in our lessons as well, so the children, it isn't a massive shock to them when they carry out these tests. They cover a range from poetry, fiction and non-fiction, and they're designed to assess their understanding of what they're reading and also their comprehension. Some questions are multiple choice and some are short answers. Some might ask them to explain a little bit more detail or select a response as well. So here are some examples. Multiple choice one: when Bella was learning to fly, she, tick 1, was lazy, did not try hard, did not give up, found it easy. So again, they might have to refer to the text, find the answer in the text. It could be that they can retrieve that answer straight away because it might say that she was lazy, or they might need to infer by her actions or what she said that she might have been lazy or did not try hard. One that assesses their understanding of the whole text is they have to put the story in order of what it happens. So they have to be able to read the whole thing and then put it in order of what's happened from 1 to 4. Another one is where they match things together. So it might be a title or a word, and it has to link to what they've read as well. And there might be some short answer questions where they have to just write down the answer very simply. They also have 2 other types of questions. One is an open-ended question, which is just to get them to use, often we use the word because, and maybe infer from her actions of why she was happy. Another one, which is a harder one to do, is to find a word that links, is a synonym or a similar word to the word that they've identified. So find a copy word that means the same as sparkle. So in the text they're reading, they've got to find that synonym for sparkle and then identify that. So that's something you can practice at home when you're reading with your children, be able to pick a word that you think they may be able to find, and then think of that alternative word. This year, the spelling, punctuation and grammar test is optional, and this year we will decide nearer the time whether we will let the children carry out this test. There's 2 tests for the spelling, punctuation and grammar. One is a spelling test where they have to spell 20 missing words within a test booklet. It's around about 15 minutes, but again, not strictly timed. The other one is a grammar, punctuation and vocabulary test, which is a question and answer booklet, which is about 20 minutes to complete, but again, not strictly timed. So, for example, in the grammar booklet, it might say, why did the underlying word start with capital letters? They have to explain why that might be, or circle 2 nouns in the sentence below. So they have to have an understanding of adjectives, verbs, nouns, adverbs. They have to have an understanding of apostrophes, commas for lists. They have to have an understanding of how to use punctuation correctly, exclamation marks, and so on. So this test does actually help assess the writing as well. So if they are able to identify that, then they're able to hopefully use it in their writing too. One is assessing present and past tense. They've got to identify which is in the present tense and which is in the past tense, and in their writing they have to be able to write in the past or present tense. A spelling paper, I'd give them a spelling linked to the year 1 and 2 words that we've been learning in their spelling bee, and I will say the word, and then I will say the sentence that it's in, and then the word again. Okay, they follow this, the patterns. It might not be necessarily the words that we've been learning over the last 2 years, but the patterns that they hopefully will have identified and learned. Then we have the maths paper. The maths paper is 2 tests. One is about 20 minutes and is the arithmetic paper, and one is a reasoning paper which lasts about 35 minutes, which also includes 5 oral questions. For the arithmetic paper, it's to do with their understanding of calculations. For the reasoning paper, it's being able to understand what's asked of you and be able to apply a method to it. There might be multiple choice, matching, true or false. Some questions also require children to do some workings out as well. So the arithmetic paper is simple as 3 times 3 equals. The children then have to either work it out mentally or any other pictorial or abstract way they can work out that answer. That's why there's some workings out underneath, and then they put the answer in the box. There's no word problems or anything to do in this paper. In the reasoning paper, they've got to sort of read it and work out what's going on. For children who struggle with being able to read something like this, adults can read the question to them, but they can't give any support with answering the question. This one, like complete the table, 38 equals 38 digits, so what does 40, and they've got to be able to read that as well. So some of these questions we may not necessarily read to them. Paper 2 also has some questions where they have to show your workings out. Sita has 50 raisins, she gives 23 to Ben, she gives 15 to Amy. How many raisins does she have? So they've got to understand, they've got to use a certain operation, they've got to then work it out in the box. If they get it nearly right and there's maybe one error, they might get 1 mark, and if they get it right, they get 2 marks. So those are the tests, and hopefully the children won't really realise that they're actually doing these tests, because it would just be a part of the daily weekly timetable. But how you can help between now and the end of May: obviously continue reading with your children, promoting that enjoyment for reading and enjoying those stories together. Reading a little at a time works quite well to ensure that they're reading regularly. But the important thing is talking about the story before, during and afterwards. So for example, asking them what's happened in the story so far. Can they predict the next part of the story? Not just necessarily just reading the words. Like I said before, picking a word and trying to get them to think of alternatives, that's also really good. Or identify the alternatives, that's also really good. Think about why. Why is the character doing this? Why are they feeling this way? Can also help. But also thinking about how the authors used language, or how the author set it out. Why has the author set it out like this? That's also really, really helpful to do. But making sure they're reading regularly is really helpful, especially to build up their stamina for reading, because some of these texts are very long for them to read. Looking up definitions is also really helpful. If you have an app or dictionary, they can find what the definition of certain words are, and that will help them in other areas of their English as well. In terms of their spelling, punctuation, grammar, obviously learning the spelling bee and any other common exception words which you can find easily on the web, on the internet. Encouraging opportunities for writing is really good. Get them to think about their writing, their punctuation and their grammar in their writing, past tense, present tense, but also being able to use their spelling bee words and spell them correctly in writing opportunities. That's the key thing that we want, is the children to apply their learning of spellings to their writing. In maths, obviously playing lots of games. We've got My Maths you can play regularly. I've got lots of different areas of My Maths to cover to revise certain concepts. Telling the time is something easily you could do at home to really enforce that at home. In year 2, ideally they need to be able to do 5-minute intervals, but for working at expected level they need to be at quarter past, quarter to, half past and o'clock. Counting games, going forward and backwards, maybe in 2s, 5s and 10s, counting odds and evens and so on, and also money, counting money for change, but also adding up money for totals, but also recognising coins and being able to identify alternatives. So for example, 50p, how could I make 50p? Well, I could do 5 10p's, 2 20p's and a 10p. So if you have any questions or anything about the test itself, don't hesitate to come and see me. Thank you very much.